Hi, everybody, and welcome to Washington Live, powered by KCTC. I'm your host, Jaron Rosine. Our producer is Nick Steffens. Our publisher is Matt Bryant. We're part of the Southeast Iowa Union. Later in the show, our guests will be Sheriff Jared Schneider and Deputy Sheriff Sean Ellingson. I'm so excited to be back. It was weird to be gone.
I missed you. It was weird.
I missed you guys too. Shout out to Todd Patterson and Dr. Schomer for a great show in my absence. Learned things. I saw you learned things too.
Yeah, learned I think I did. I don't know.
Well, it doesn't look like you're retaining them.
Yeah, I did not retain it. It was like a college lecture, just kind of.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was doing. I also learned things and shared some things that I learned to the Leadership Iowa University. I spoke with a panel of elected officials at the state capitol. Here is a photo of the group. This is through the ABI, the Association of Business and Industry. It was a lovely time. I was mentioning it before. I went up early on Sunday, had the opportunity to go to Hinterland, the music festival.
Very jealous.
In St. Charles. Yeah, you wanted to go. Now you're a working guy.
Yep.
Have some good friends that went the whole weekend. I just went on Sunday, and it was delightful. Hung out with Rob Sand randomly, a friend. His wife is a friend of my friend's wife, and all of a sudden we were together in an RV and had a little bourbon when there was a weather delay, and then went back to the show. It was a big, small world all the time.
That's Iowa living.
Yeah. So that's my update. Glad to be back. Let's hop right into it. Weather is right now, and we can see out our little window here in the studio. It's 75 degrees and sunny. This afternoon it'll be 84 and sunny. In the evening it is cooling down nicely to 70 and then 63 degrees. So just a little bit of pool time left. We have our police report and our almanac. So I'm going to blast through this. Our guests and their people have been busy. How many calls for service? 86 calls for service.
But that's 3 days because we didn't have Sunday to Monday.
So 86 calls for service, 18 were traffic, 8 were welfare. We had 8 fire. We'll hit those in a moment. 7 trespass, 5 animal, 4 and less in the usual warrant, assist, family, civil, theft, public service, civil standby, property loss, sex offender checks, assault, fraud, etc. So let's hit the highlights. In Washington, caller reports a black Ford with no plates is slamming on their brakes, possibly has an open container, unable to locate. The bandits disappear.
Yeah, I feel like the open container was just a deduction or assumption.
Well, as Nick often mentions, we have these reports, and then when it's followed up on between the time of the report and the occurrence, it
doesn't always line up.
So let's keep moving because we've got a bunch. A 17-year-old out of control in their home, taking things. Subject returned things. Caller advised neighbors harassing him about the property line. 92.8 responded and spoke with all the subjects involved. The landlord's going to do a survey situation.
I feel like every man in his life has to get into a property dispute with his neighbor.
It's just part of the package.
Part of life.
I don't know. My neighbor is Dana, and she is 115. No, she's maybe in her 80s, but she's very sweet. We don't have these issues, luckily. And it's kind of weird because our property lines, like each one is actually off a little. So the garage actually hangs over onto my line a little. My garage hangs over to the other person's line a little. The next garage hangs over a tiny bit. It's a strange chunk, but we all just play nice. Caller advised over the weekend one of his vacuums got damaged. $200 worth of damages. I am curious about this one.
Sounds like a police
matter. If you know more about the damaged vacuum, I'll get all distracted. I used to ask strangers what kind of vacuums they would have in the grocery store. My mother can tell you about this. I was fascinated because there's upright, there's canister, there's the rainbow vacs with the water in them that like keep the dust down. I had an obsession, like all through my childhood, like that's 5 to 13, maybe. I'm so sorry. I was supposed to go through the police report quickly. I will get back to it. Flatbed trailer with a corn planter on fire, not great. A caller advised she lost her wedding ring in her own home, also not great. Neighbors that have allowed their chickens to run freely and have done damage to the flower bed. This is a favorite. Female juvenile caller is requesting an officer. She states she feels unsafe with her parents because they have been harassing and threatening her because she hasn't done the chores she was supposed to do. 102 and 112 responded to this one. Caller was advised her parents have the right to tell her what to do and where she can and cannot go. I think we'll maybe talk about this in a bit. It seems like sometimes the police are therapists.
Yes.
Or spiritual advisors in this case. Landlord refusing to return property. Subject parked in the fire lane appears to be drunk with 2 kids in the car. Unfounded, not drunk. We had a brown cow walking on the highway. I recall this page because the fire, Riverside Fire, was called to help, but then I think they were disregarded. The cattle were pushed back to where they belong. Not great. Hitting a cow is a large animal to hit. Subject on golf carts with no lights. We had 3 of these false fire alarms. One was at the school, one was at the hospital, and then there's a third in the mix as well. We have a caller that backed into someone. We have a caller that let his girlfriend borrow his vehicle, and she has not returned it. Left messages on the cell phone. Couple traffic accidents. I don't think any injuries. One that went in the ditch, one that struck in a double driveway. We had a dog issue. We're nearing the end, but again, everyone has been busy. We had a juvenile runaway that was found. We had a caller report that someone hit their friend. No assault. A subject that tried to pass someone and went into the ditch. A subject that was trespassing in a store. A fire alarm at the school. Here was not a great theft. Caller advised that theft occurred 5 minutes ago. Blue Dodge Dakota towards Casey's. They took side cutters, other parts missing from the rack, located the subjects who denied taking the items, said they just put them back on the racks when they realized they didn't have enough money. We'll continue to check the store racks for missing items. So it sounds like some confusion and trespass and shenanigans because they were issued trespass warnings, so they are not welcome back to that store. On our second to last page, we had an estranged wife who accessed the Venmo account of her estranged other spouse, took $250, and the memo line put child support.
Girl boss.
Girl boss?
Yeah.
You're so young. Oh, that's great. We had the other vehicle accident, and the busy. So I saw on the pager the fire department was responding to a field fire, which overlapped with this training on the Westchester fertilizer plant for an ammonia release. So a real comprehensive training. I saw people in the sheriff's office were part of it. I think, and there was an accident right before that. So our team of public safety people were kind of run a little ragged for a minute yesterday afternoon.
Oh, I thought you meant like over the weekend.
No,
like
this
you
was
had
just
your
yesterday.
pager while you're out enjoying Hinterland.
No, this was
It's like, oh, that sucks. Have fun with that.
No, this was just yesterday. And then finally, we had a report of an oldest son that thought he saw 2 shadows outside the residence, requests an officer, unable to locate anyone.
Sounds like ghouls.
At our next report, we should have less. This was 3 days worth and a very busy time. Before we go to break and enjoy a conversation, we're going to talk about the service of our sheriff and deputy sheriff, and then back to school safety is on the docket. And we have some great advice and information for you. Before we go to break and do that, what is the Almanac best day today, Nick?
It is a good day to begin logging and also to pour concrete.
Logging and concrete.
So that's my choice for that today. We also have an open house local event coming up.
Yeah, thank you. So muscle work, logging, and concrete work.
Yes.
Shout out to the open house for Kendra Ricky, who has, I think, the Chair Salon and Spa. Her open house is on the 11th. It's at the same time as the Farmers Market.
So
And
4 p.m.
At 4 p.m. Her shop is on the west side of the square, right there by the Farmers Market. She has a ribbon cutting, and it's been 1 year of the chair. Shout out to Kendra and congratulations. And you're invited to her open house. We're going to go to break. Stick around when we get back to talk to Sheriff Schneider and Deputy Sheriff Sean Ellingson.
At Ace, we're eager to assist you with all your shopping needs. Whether that be finally painting that room, getting ready for the next hunting season, or upgrading your bathroom. Whatever it may be, we'll make sure you get what you need.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
Federation Bank is a locally owned bank providing award-winning customer service. We believe that we are more than just a federation of banks, but a federation of communities, serving Brighton, Richland, Wellman, and Washington, Iowa. Federation Bank's highly skilled staff is here to make sure you are able to accomplish your personal and professional goals, whatever they may be. Federation Bank, your family bank.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Washington Live, powered by KCTC. I'm your host, Jaron Rosine. I'm joined by Nick and our guests today, Sheriff Jared Schneider and Deputy Sheriff Sean Ellingson. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to have you. Happy to have you both. We have some things to cover. We mentioned how busy yesterday was, and I asked on the break how many of the police report things that we went through that the guys had to be, these gentlemen had to be a part of, and I understand didn't have to do that in the field yesterday or the few days, but part of the drill, Sean.
Yeah, fortunately for our positions now, we're not out there in the ditches as much as we used to be when we were younger. But yeah, there was a big planning events that went on for that drill over at the Koch fertilizer plant, and we're obviously part of that.
Which is a great thing to do and be prepared for in case anything were, heaven forbid, to happen, that guys are ready to handle it, and girls.
Yeah, there's a lot of law enforcement that is preparing for the worst and hoping it never happens. So.
Well, before we hop into things, you just mentioned back in the day. I wondered if you would both share how long you've been in your role, what your role is, and kind of what you're calling. Like, how did you get into law enforcement? What was the pull to do the work?
I'll let Sean go first. He's been doing it a little longer than I have.
Shout out to Coach. Sean,
Yeah,
what was your...
I get that a lot. So it was weird. It was, when I was in high school, I graduated from Nevada, Iowa, back in 1985.
Is that where you met your wife?
Yeah,
Was it Nevada?
my wife's from Nevada also.
Yeah.
So, and I'd had normal contact with law enforcement, like most kind of kids do.
Sure.
And I know it was always pretty positive, so I was interested in it. So I left straight from high school, went to Northeast Missouri State University, which is now Truman State.
Now Truman, awesome.
Yep, went down there and graduated from there with a criminal justice degree, and we were living in Iowa City in 1990, just got married, and a guy named Yale Jarvis hired me down here as a police officer, actually. I contacted him to try to get on with the sheriff's office, but they weren't hiring at the time. So I started in April of 1990 with the police department. Yale was our acting chief of police at that time.
Absolutely. And what a legacy he's left,
yeah.
and how neat that you're here in connection to...
So I promised Yale 5 years, and that's turned into about 32 years. So,
And you've been with Sheriff Schneider for how long now?
He promised me at least that many, too, I think.
You're gonna be... That's a lot of years.
32 or 5. I think I promised him 6. I can't remember what it was. But no, I was with the PD all, up until January of 2017.
Yes.
And then when Jared took office in 2017, I moved out there to be his chief deputy.
Which I think is neat, and you've been in that role since just a little before that time, or about... Tell us your path, Jared.
So, going back to my childhood again, I probably didn't participate in those activities like he's talking about, but you kind of went through those stages of growing up and thinking about law enforcement and thinking about doing something else. And like through high school, I kind of focused in on business and was kind of going to take that route. And then at the tail end of high school, I kind of flipped back to the law enforcement thing again. I started doing some ride-alongs with the local deputy there in Wellman, and decided to take that path. I ended up getting hired by the sheriff's office to work in the jail when I was 20.
Okay.
So I did that for a couple years and then got hired as a deputy.
And would it have been Sheriff Jarvis at the time
Yes.
that hired you as well into
Yep.
that jail? Okay. Yep.
Yes, yep. And so got hired as a deputy and did that for a while. And then at a certain point, got promoted up through the ranks. And then Sheriff Dunbar put me in as chief deputy in 2010, and I did that up until running for sheriff in 2016, and have been sheriff now for just under 6 years.
6, that's awesome. All connected to Sheriff Dunbar's wife, Pam, was my former boss. My first job as a youngin' was True Value Hardware, and I remember Jerry running for office at the time, and all of that coming to be. Before we hop into the back to school safety, driving, advice, etc., I wanted to ask just one more question about your jobs and like what your duties are or a typical day. I'll share. As mayor, I'm privileged to sit on the Emergency Management 911 Communications Commission, so we see each other at these meetings. What other duties are a part of the jobs that you have now that you're not quite in the ditches, so to speak? What's a typical day, and what are your duties?
I don't know that any day's typical in law enforcement. But, you know, we spend a lot of time either in planning meetings like Sean talked about earlier with the drill that we did last night. You know, the thing that's most visible for the sheriff's office are the deputies out driving around, patrolling, responding to calls, but there's a lot more that goes on within the sheriff's office. The jail, you know,
You're in charge of all of the jail stuff. That's right.
That takes up a lot of our time. When I first got elected, Sean and I spent a lot of time with the radio project. What we thought was going to be about a 1.5 to 2 year project turned into about a 4-year project to get it up and running, and we're still dealing with loose ends from that too. So
call some of these updates, and I was not in the trenches of that project. There was a lot that you did, and thank you for that. It's important.
And so there's, you know, a lot of our time spent in either meetings or, you know, tying up loose ends from those meetings, making sure what we're working on, you know, keeps moving along.
This is perfect.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, there's different areas of the sheriff's office with the jail. We have patrol, we have investigations, we have civil, and I kind of as chief deputy, I mean it's all over the place. Every week I kind of remind Jared that was not on the job description when he asked me to come out there. I mean, and but you know, we've got great guys in those positions as far as our patrol sergeants and patrol lieutenants. And really, they come to us with questions, but we really want them to kind of run that area. So we kind of help guide them, and when they need things, you know, we try to make sure they've got what they need and they've got the support they need to do their job. And it's the same thing in the jail with our jail staff. You know, they kind of run the thing. We just got to be there to, you know, when things are broke, things need fixed, we need to improve things to make it better for the inmates and for the jail. Jailers themselves, you know, we're the ones that need to make those decisions and get that done for them.
That's a lot of responsibility, and our listeners may not know this, but the city of Washington, we have the police department, and often work together and mutual aid, or I don't know what the word is on those calls, but the sheriff's office is the whole entire county, and you're contracted for. Would you share our listeners, because this whole pile of police report stuff, a lot of it is you guys. You have your teams covering. Is that correct? Tell us about what all you do in the
contract law enforcement with all of the contract towns in Washington, or all of the towns in Washington County except for the city of Washington.
I thought, all of them except for the.
So anything outside of the city limits of Washington, the sheriff's office is going to be responsible for. Not totally unique, but you know, to have every town in the county except for the county seat, you know, is probably a little bit unique. Some counties might only pick up a few of those towns outside, and you still have some smaller police departments. So yeah, that keeps our guys busy, you know, being responsible for everything outside of Washington.
That is,
you know, and you talk, that's kind of a legacy of Sheriff Jarvis back in the day that got that going. And you know, the big advantage to that is a smaller town like Westchester or Ainsworth, you know, they couldn't afford to
such
hire
a burden
a
on the
deputy.
taxpayer. Yeah,
but you know, with one call, you know, they can have 10 guys there, they can have canines, they can have, you know, investigators, they can have a SWAT team. I mean, they can have a lot of resources at their disposal relatively quickly that a small town that had to pay for their own police department could never do.
That's a great point. And then with all of that experience, we're going to go to break in just a second, but when we come back, I appreciate you indulging on the background and sharing with some of our listeners, you know, just what brought you here and all of the work that you do. With that experience, we have great advice we're going to talk about with our kind of back to school safety week. We have Superintendent Stone that will be our guest on Friday. You're watching Washington Live. When we come back from the break, look for that, picking up the conversation and that thread. Stick around.
Since 1905, Kelowna Cooperative Technology Company has helped our communities stay connected with the latest advancements in clear, dependable telecommunications services. KCTC provides rural Iowans with access to high-speed fiber internet, as well as phone, television, computer repair, and cybersecurity solutions. We're also proud supporters of local organizations and area schools within the community. KCTC, keeping Kelowna connected.
For many, farmland holds more than financial value. It holds emotional value. Whether your farm has been in your family for generations or it's an investment, we recognize the importance of your relationship with your land. At Hertz Farm Management, we have been serving landowners in Iowa for over 75 years. At Hertz, we bring a personal and knowledgeable approach to helping customers manage, buy, sell, or appraise farms. We invite you to visit our Washington office and partner with someone you can trust.
Welcome back to Washington Live, powered by KCTC. I'm your host, Jaron Rosine. Our producer is Nick Steffens, and I'm joined by Sheriff Jared Schneider and Deputy Sheriff Sean Ellingson. We're going to pick up where we left off with back to school safety first, and then we'll play the birthday game. If you have a birthday, I forgot to say this at the beginning, I'm a little rusty for my day off, but if you have a birthday shout out, please put it in the chat, or you can email washialive@gmail.com. That's always the case, obviously. You can email anytime, anniversary, birthday, local event. We'd love to give it a shout out. So let's talk back to school, right around the corner. What can our listeners know, do? Let's hop into that, back to school safety decisions. Who'd like to start?
I guess I'll get started. Typically, I like to talk about the driving aspects of
Yes.
it. You've got a lot of new drivers out there that are going to be traveling to and from the schools. And, it's a big deal for a kid. So one thing that I recommend is, especially if you've got a young driver, as a parent, go drive that route a few times. There's certain intersections that, are more dangerous than others.
And we mentioned some of those intersections. Why don't you shout them out? Because this is great advice.
Especially if you're a rural student and you're going to pass the the North Junction here, 1 and 92. That can be a little bit tricky. And especially going out here in Washington, going out to the Kirkwood Center, Highway 1 and West 5th and Lexington.
Oh, as I know. I was in my only and ever car accident at that intersection, which was not great.
As a first responder, how many accidents have you? I mean, there's a lot there.
Well, that's what I was, I mean, not to be morbid, but life can be short in our moments. And not, again, that's a little scary, but safety, seatbelts, the routes that you mentioned.
That's a super tough intersection. We're going to have more train traffic here, especially in Washington. So, teach your kid a safe route and kind of point out the intersections that are going to be a little bit tricky for them. Sometimes the shortest route is not only not safe, but it may not be the fastest. You might be better going a little further
for a more efficient route.
For a more efficient route to avoid some tough intersections or dangerous intersections. And it's the same thing for kids walking to school. And I think Jared's had some topics about kids walking to school.
Let's talk about the walking. But if you're driving, great advice. Just take a moment and do the route a few times with your young one and point out hey, this is one to watch for. Adults that have that experience will know which intersections and can pass that knowledge on. That's great advice.
Now, if we can just get the kids to listen to us.
Well, as we saw in the report, you can't tell them what to do.
They have to listen to us.
I think one other thing, though, we should touch on the driving is school permits and just young drivers in general. And what getting a violation will do. I get phone calls from parents from time to time. Hey, my kid got a speeding ticket and now will not be able to get their driver's license until, you're
delayed or
they're 16 and a half because of the period you have to go without a violation.
So it's not a takeaway for 30 days if
there
they
is
violate?
A takeaway, but then there's some other consequences beyond that, and it happens quite often. So, I recommend that parents and young drivers brush up on the requirements for the school permit and the laws pertaining to school permits, because it could, have some consequences down the road if they don't follow those.
So namely, that would be not driving home from school, stopping at a buddy's house or a girlfriend's house, hanging out for 2 hours, and then consequences.
Or driving too fast, trying to get home because, you were delayed or things like that. And then there's the whole other side of that, and getting a violation at a young age and what it's going to cost your parents and insurance premiums. You know,
So
you
it's
got
worth the conversation if it's
Yeah,
not worth
have
it.
those ahead of time. You know.
Financially, yeah. The walking people, those that are not driving. That sounds like driving, yeah. So for the walkers, what do they need to know?
I think, again, like Sean was talking about, that planning the routes is very important. Also having the conversation with young kids about coming straight home. Don't be stopping at a friend's house, because it seems like almost every year within the first month or so of school, maybe we have somebody that's gone to the friend's house, doesn't tell their parents about it, and then we get a call later because, you know, our kid's missing, and then it is a big search to try to figure out where they go, and quite a bit of the time they've stopped someplace on their way home. So
Do you do that? Is it Family 360? Is there some app on the phone?
Life 360.
Life 360 stalk your. Is that something you'd recommend or not recommend?
they
or-
can stalk you too, though.
There you go. I'm not as familiar with it, but I know some that do that, and every family would need to make that decision on
You
their
know,
own.
it
But
depends on what age your kid's walking, and you
Yeah.
know, if they have a phone or not. One thing I know I've had friends do in the past is point out friendly houses.
Okay.
I mean, I've come home before and there's been a kid on my front porch that I know because his mom and dad were late picking him up. So if you've got a route that your kid's walking, say, hey, you know, that's Jaron's house, that's safe, you can go there.
Sure.
If anybody's ever following you or you feel uncomfortable, go knock on his
go knock
door.
on the safe house. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that it's good to point those things out along the route so that they know that there's an area they can go to if they're not feeling good.
Perfect. Stop arm violations in school buses. That was something else that I had on my list to ask about. What should our listeners or their children know about that?
It's not a suggestion.
Yeah. And that's a stiff penalty too. You need to pay attention and safety.
Yeah, and so just I think the biggest thing for drivers there is to know when you see the flashing yellows, when you can still go around the bus with flashing yellows, and then obviously if it's red, you know, you stop from both directions.
Just like the regular colors. Yellow is caution, red is stop.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to my early comment too. If you are in a position that you are always running into a stop sign on a school bus, if there's a better route to take
Take that
take
route,
it.
yeah.
I know there was back in the day when I did patrol in Washington, there was a bus that always stopped on this one road, and it took a long time for the student to get out to the bus, and I had to enforce a couple stop by violations.
That patience would be a
Yep.
struggle. if
And they would
it's,
sit there and sit
multiple
there and
minutes.
sit there, and then I'd have to go talk to the people, and they're like, it does it all the time, every day. That bus sits there for like 5 minutes. I'm like, why don't you go one block east and go around that?
Good advice.
That's a good idea. And, you know, never had a problem again.
Well,
So,
sixth sense is common sense.
yeah. So, you know, if your child's on a route that has a lot of bus stops, you know, they just need to know that they need to stop. And if there's a better route that they can take to avoid those, that'd be a plan also.
That's solid. Well, gentlemen, I'm so glad that you've come on to give this advice as our back to school kind of end of the week. Namely, I think my takeaway is it's about transport, like how you get to school, how you get home from school, whether you're driving or walking, and making smart decisions. And so if you're watching, have that conversation with your child, have that experience with your child, or give that advice to the people that you know with kids, like, hey, maybe we should take that young one on that route a couple times so we can avoid problems before they happen.
Yeah.
What else have we missed? Is there anything else you'd like to cover?
I think also when it comes to the buses is if you have a student riding a bus, the safe ways of getting on and off the bus also.
And luckily, there's the arm swing out, so you're not a bus driver is less likely to, because there's a blind spot there. So, right, is this kind of part of that?
That's part of it, and I also think with the vehicles is making sure that you're looking as you're going one way or another as you're getting on or off the bus. Pay attention to your surroundings and
Sure.
look for those.
Even though that stop sign is there, if someone is not stopping and a child is not looking, that could be an incident. Yeah,
Yes.
great advice.
Yeah, definitely. And then just the rest of the citizens in the community know that, it's going to be starting. You're going to have young drivers out there driving. Just know that, as an example, in Washington, Iowa, between 8 and 8:15 and 3 and
That is
3:30.
when we have traffic. That's the only time.
At Stewart School, you don't want to drive anywhere around there.
I know I do joke. We really don't have traffic in Washington, but nope, actually, those are the times. It's
Yeah.
like, what is happening?
There are fewer and fewer kids walking to school anymore.
Yeah.
I think most of them do get dropped off, and that does create a lot of traffic.
That is a great thing to point out. We're going to end the show and lighten things up a little bit. I've asked our gentleman guest today to play the birthday game. Have we missed anything before then? I think we've really covered a good amount.
I think we're good. Let's do some birthdays.
All right, let's knock it out with the birthdays. Nick,
Okay.
Birthday shout outs. My Uncle Les Wall has a birthday today. Kevin Crone has a birthday today. Michael Powers has a birthday today. That's on my list. Of course, our shout out was for the local event at the Chair Salon and Spa, which is tomorrow, Thursday, while the farmers market goes on.
So the rules of the birthday game are: I put a celebrity on the screen. You have to guess their age. If you're within 3 years, you get a point. If you get it exactly on, you get 2 points.
All right.
You guys ready?
We've had to do a couple renditions of the rules because I'm smart cooking and not good at math. No, here, yeah. But so Jared.
So the first up, we have Kylie Jenner. I was gonna say like her
great
title.
picture, Nick, you're just killing it.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of hard to not find a
Like that.
more promiscuous photo.
Would someone like to go first?
Well, I don't follow her on Twitter, but I'm guessing I'm going to go with 34.
Okay.
I was going to go 29.
I'm also going to go younger, and I'll do 31 then. And you're going to have to keep track of more people today. What do we
Yeah,
have?
she's 25.
Oh, gosh.
She looks.
She's not going to be a fan of me. is she? She probably can't. She won't follow me on Twitter either.
So I don't think anyone. Yeah, no points awarded on
I'm not making
that.
any points with Kylie.
I figured that one would be.
She's been around forever. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, she's been famous since she was like 16.
Yeah.
Who do we have next?
Antonio Banderas.
Banderas, yes.
Yes, my Spanish accent's not
All right.
good.
Would you like to go first on this one?
I'm going to say 58.
58.
I'm going 62.
And I'm going 65. I feel like he's older, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see how it lands.
He's 62.
So, you get 2 points. I get 1 point? Yes.
Is
Yes.
that because I'm the closest to his age? That
You
I got
landed right
that?
on it. Yeah. Oh, got you.
Okay, this one is a bit. Jake Stone, who is the new Jake from State Farm.
All right. Jake from State Farm. That's an interesting
He
poll.
was, yes, recasted because the original Jake actually won a contest for State Farm. So he was an actual employee. And so when they wanted to make like more commercials with Jake, like we needed a real actor now. So that's why they recasted him.
I appreciate that history. I'll go first. I'm going to guess, 33. I don't know.
Go ahead, Jared.
37.
Ooh, I'm going to go lower. I'm going to go 30.
He is 37.
Oh, gosh.
Tied it up.
Do I get a point? Did I
No,
get
you're 4 off.
So son of a gun. So 2,
Okay.
2, and 1.
So now
I'm
we're-
pretty bad at the birthday game.
So now we're moving into tomorrow's birthdays. We have Chris Hemsworth, new Thor movie out. I feel like that's what he's most famous for. Maybe he's done other things.
I'll go closer to 1. Oh, actually, I'm not first. Sean, you're first.
Oh, I'll go with, I'm going to go 34.
All right.
That's what I was going to guess too.
You could do it like Price is Right and get.
35?
Yeah. I will go to 40. I'm going to guess older.
He is 39. So Jaron, you get a point. We
I
are
get a point.
completely tied up now.
Tied up.
All right.
Two's
There's
across
3
the
more.
board.
Let's knock through them.
We got the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan.
Oh, can you?
I think you're first on this. What do you have? Are you doing mental math
Yeah.
from your childhood?
Yes.
Went up?
How many WrestleManias were there?
I'm going to say 73.
73. I will go 75.
I'm gonna go 70.
All right. What do we have?
He is 69 years old.
Oh.
So point
Take the
and.
lead.
All right.
We have 2 more left.
More to go. Mr.
So we
Joe
have
Rogan.
where is he? Where's Joe? Bro Jogan right here.
I guess I'm first on this one.
Yep.
41.
41?
I'll go 40. I'll go 45.
46.
He
I was
is
confident.
He's actually 55.
Ooh,
All that elk meat and DMT apparently is keeping him young.
I tell you, he knows his stuff. So
No points there. We have one more to go
We have,
on our birthday
I had to throw in
game.
another actress, Viola Davis.
Viola Davis. I think
oh,
you're
that's my 63.
Yeah, she's in something about a murder or some.
How to Get Away with Murder, I believe is the name of the show.
Yeah. So what was your guess again?
63.
63. What do you have for us?
58.
58. 55.
So she is 57. So that puts a three-way tie, I believe.
Oh,
Well, that is a first, and I think we either leave it unless you have a tiebreaker prepared.
I do not have a tiebreaker prepared.
We'll leave it. We'll have to
I did not
have-
expect after 7 birthdays for there to be a tiebreaker.
That was impressive.
You guys both get a trophy. We've added a
we're
little
equally
trophy.
poor in our guessing.
That'll work. So yeah, our first three-way tie. We'll have to have our guests back. Our guests today have been Sheriff Jared Schneider, Deputy Sheriff Sean Ellingson. Thank you for coming on the show to talk about important things and some not important stuff too.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to have you here. You're watching Washington Live. I'm your host, Jaron Rosine. Our producer is Nick Steffens. We will see you on Friday with Superintendent Willie Stone.